One night, one drink, one kiss that echoed through every phone in the room. One night, one drink, one kiss that echoed through every phone in the room. The champagne flute trembled in Sarah Chen's hand as she stood frozen in the doorway of the Whitmore Industries annual gala, watching her life implode in real time, across 100 smartphone screens. The kiss that had lasted barely 3 seconds, a moment of pure, unguarded connection with tech billionaire Marcus Whitmore himself, was now being replayed, screenshot, and shared faster than wildfire through Silicon Valley's most exclusive social circles. The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd spent the past 6 months developing privacy protection algorithms for Whitmore Industries, only to become the victim of the very thing she'd been trying to prevent. 24 hours ago, Sarah had been just another anonymous software engineer in Marcus's empire, invisible among the thousands of employees scattered across his tech conglomerate. Now, as phones buzzed incessantly around the opulent ballroom of the St. Regis San Francisco, she was the most talked-about woman in the building. The kiss hadn't been planned. Nothing about that evening had gone according to plan. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing tales of unexpected connections and the power of authenticity. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from our global community. Sarah's journey to that moment had begun 6 months earlier, on a drizzly Tuesday morning in Mountain View, California. She'd been running late for her first day at Whitmore Industries, her ancient Honda Civic sputtering through the early morning traffic on 101. The coffee maker in her cramped studio apartment had broken down again, leaving her caffeine-deprived and slightly frazzled as she navigated the sprawling campus that housed one of Silicon Valley's most influential companies. At 28, Sarah had already built a reputation as one of the Bay Area's most promising cybersecurity experts. Despite never having worked for one of the big tech giants, she'd spent her career at smaller firms, developing elegant solutions to complex privacy problems, while watching her Stanford classmates collect stock options at Facebook, Google, and Apple. The opportunity at Whitmore Industries had come through a former professor who knew about her groundbreaking work on data anonymization protocols, work that had caught the attention of Marcus Whitmore's head of security. The Whitmore Industries campus was like nothing Sarah had ever experienced. Spanning 40 acres of meticulously landscaped grounds in the heart of Silicon Valley, it resembled a cross between a high-end university and a futuristic city. Glass buildings rose from perfectly manicured lawns, connected by tree-lined walkways dotted with outdoor meeting spaces, food trucks, and recreational areas where employees played volleyball or practiced yoga during breaks. The main building, where Sarah would be working, stood 12 stories tall with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of the San Francisco Bay. Sarah's first weeks at the company were a blur of orientation sessions, security clearances, and technical onboarding. She was assigned to the Privacy Protection Division, a relatively new department that Marcus Whitmore had created in response to growing concerns about data security and user privacy. Her manager, Dr. Lisa Rodriguez, was a former NSA cryptographer who joined Whitmore Industries 2 years earlier, with a mandate to build the most sophisticated privacy protection systems in the industry. Marcus takes privacy seriously, Dr. Rodriguez had explained during Sarah's first team meeting. He's seen what happens when tech companies get careless with user data. Our job is to make sure Whitmore Industries stays ahead of the curve, not just in compliance, but in genuine protection. The team was small, but exceptional. 12 engineers and researchers working on cutting-edge privacy technologies. Sarah quickly found her place among them, contributing to projects that ranged from advanced encryption protocols to machine learning systems that could identify and prevent data breaches before they occurred. The work was challenging and meaningful, the exact kind of problems she'd dreamed of solving during her graduate studies at Stanford. For the first 5 months, Sarah rarely thought about Marcus Whitmore as anything more than a name on the company letterhead. He was a figure glimpsed occasionally in company-wide video conferences or mentioned in the tech press, but he inhabited a world so far removed from her daily reality that he might as well have been fictional. The closest she'd come to seeing him in person was catching a glimpse of his security detail walking through the lobby during one of his rare visits to the Mountain View campus. That changed on a Wednesday afternoon in October, when Dr. Rodriguez called Sarah into her office with news that would alter the trajectory of her career and her life. "Sarah, I need you to prepare a presentation for the board meeting next week," Dr. Rodriguez said, her expression serious but excited. "Your work on the distributed privacy protocol has caught some attention upstairs. Marcus wants to see a demonstration." Sarah felt her stomach drop. She'd been working on the distributed privacy protocol for months, developing a system that would allow users to maintain complete control over their personal data while still enabling companies to provide personalized services. It was technically complex and conceptually revolutionary, but she'd never imagined it would reach the attention of the CEO himself. "He'll be presenting to the board?" Sarah asked, trying to keep the nervousness out of her voice. "Actually," Dr. Rodriguez smiled, "he wants you to present it directly to the board. Marcus believes that the best innovations come from the people who create them, not from executives who summarize them." The week leading up to the board presentation was the most intense of Sarah's professional life. She worked 18-hour days refining her algorithms, preparing demonstrations, and rehearsing her presentation until she could deliver it flawlessly, even while sleep-deprived. The night before the meeting, she stood in front of her bathroom mirror in her tiny apartment, practicing her opening lines and trying to calm her nerves. The boardroom was located on the top floor of Whitmore Industries headquarters in downtown San Francisco, a gleaming 40-story tower that overlooked the Bay Bridge. Sarah had never been to the San Francisco office before, and she spent the elevator ride to the 40th floor trying not to think about the fact that she was about to present to some of the most powerful people in the tech industry. The boardroom itself was a study in understated elegance, a long conference table made from a single piece of polished walnut, surrounded by leather chairs and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered breathtaking views of the city and bay. 12 board members were already seated when Sarah arrived, their faces a mixture of curiosity and skeptical attention. And then Marcus Whitmore walked in, and Sarah understood immediately why he'd become one of the most successful entrepreneurs of his generation. At 35, Marcus carried himself with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from having built something extraordinary from nothing. He was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair that was perpetually slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it while thinking through complex problems. His eyes were an unusual shade of gray-green, and they had the kind of intensity that made Sarah feel like he could see straight through any pretense or facade. He wore a simple navy sweater and dark jeans, a studied casualness that somehow managed to be more elegant than the expensive suits worn by the other board members. But what struck Sarah most was how he listened. As she began her presentation, she noticed that Marcus didn't just hear her words, he absorbed them, asked follow-up questions that demonstrated a deep understanding of the technical concepts, and challenged her assumptions in ways that actually improved her explanations. "The distributed privacy protocol is fascinating," he said about halfway through her presentation, leaning forward slightly in his chair. "But I'm curious about the user experience. How do we make something this sophisticated accessible to someone who doesn't have a computer science degree?" It was exactly the right question, the one that separated good technologists from great ones. Sarah felt a flutter of excitement as she launched into her explanation of the user interface design, the seamless integration that would make advanced privacy controls as simple as adjusting the volume on a smartphone. The presentation lasted 90 minutes, with the final 30 minutes devoted to an intense Q&A session that felt more like a collaborative brainstorming session than a formal corporate review. When it ended, the board members filed out with expressions of genuine enthusiasm, several stopping to shake Sarah's hand and compliment her work. Marcus was the last to leave, pausing at the door to look back at Sarah, who was packing up her laptop and trying to process what had just happened. "Exceptional work," he said simply. "I'd like to discuss implementation timeline with you sometime. Are you free for coffee later this week?" Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak coherently. Coffee with Marcus Whitmore felt surreal, like being invited to have a casual chat with a celebrity or head of state. Great, Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him during the meeting. I'll have Jennifer reach out to schedule something. 2 days later, Sarah found herself sitting across from Marcus in Blue Bottle Coffee, a small cafe in the Mission District that seemed deliberately chosen for its low-key atmosphere. He'd arrived first, she noticed, and was reading something on his phone while drinking what looked like a simple black coffee. No entourage, no security detail visible. Just a billionaire CEO sitting in a neighborhood coffee shop like any other customer. I hope you don't mind meeting somewhere informal, Marcus said as Sarah sat down with her latte. I find that the best conversations happen outside conference rooms. What followed was one of the most intellectually stimulating conversations of Sarah's life. Marcus wasn't just interested in the technical aspects of her privacy protocol. He wanted to understand the philosophical implications, the potential societal impact, the ways it might change how people thought about their relationship with technology. I've been thinking a lot about responsibility lately, he said at one point, staring out the cafe window at the bustling street. When you create technology that affects millions of people's lives, how do you ensure you're using that power ethically? It wasn't a rhetorical question. Sarah could see that he genuinely struggled with these issues, that despite his success, or perhaps because of it, he was deeply concerned about the unintended consequences of innovation. I think, Sarah said carefully, that the key is to always remember that behind every data point, every user profile, every algorithmic decision, there's a real person with a real life that can be affected by what we build. Marcus nodded slowly. That's exactly why I want to fast-track your privacy protocol. It's not just about compliance or competitive advantage. It's about creating technology that treats people with dignity. Their coffee meeting stretched into lunch, then into a long walk through Golden Gate Park, where they continued their conversation about technology, ethics, and the future of privacy in an increasingly connected world. Sarah found herself sharing ideas and perspectives she'd never voiced before, encouraged by Marcus's genuine curiosity and thoughtful responses. It was during that walk that Sarah began to see past the public persona of Marcus Whitmore, tech mogul, and glimpsed the person underneath. He talked about his childhood in a small town in Oregon, where his father had been a high school math teacher and his mother had run a small bookstore. He'd started programming at age 12 on an ancient computer his parents had bought secondhand, spending countless hours in the bookstore's back office while teaching himself to code. I never intended to become a CEO, he admitted as they sat on a bench overlooking the park's lake. I just wanted to solve interesting problems. The business side of things was always secondary. But you're good at it, Sarah observed. The business side, I mean. Whitmore Industries isn't just technically innovative, it's also incredibly well run. Marcus laughed, a sound that was surprisingly warm and unguarded. I have excellent people who handle the parts I'm terrible at. My job is mostly to stay out of their way and focus on the big picture stuff. As the weeks passed, Sarah found herself working more closely with Marcus on the implementation of her privacy protocol. What had started as a single project expanded into a comprehensive overhaul of Whitmore Industries' approach to user data, with Sarah serving as the technical lead on what Marcus privately called the most important initiative in the company's history. Their professional relationship developed into something that felt like friendship, though Sarah was always conscious of the vast gulf between their positions in the company hierarchy. Marcus had a way of making her forget about that gulf, treating her as an intellectual equal, seeking her input on decisions far beyond her official job responsibilities, and including her in high-level strategic discussions that shaped the company's direction. It was during one of these discussions in late November that Marcus mentioned the annual gala. It's mostly a networking thing, he said with obvious distaste. A lot of people who think they're more important than they are, drinking expensive wine and making small talk about acquisitions and IPOs. But it's also our biggest fundraising event for the Whitmore Foundation, and some of our key investors expect to see me there. The Whitmore Foundation was Marcus's philanthropic arm, focusing on digital literacy programs for underserved communities and funding for privacy-focused technology research. Sarah had been impressed by its scope and genuine impact. It wasn't the kind of vanity charity that many tech billionaires created for tax advantages. The privacy protocol launch is scheduled for January, Marcus continued. So I thought it might be good to preview it at the gala. Give people a sense of what we're working on, why it matters. Would you be interested in presenting it? Sarah felt the familiar flutter of nervousness mixed with excitement. To your investors and board members? To everyone, Marcus said. Investors, board members, employees, journalists. It's the kind of announcement that could shape how the entire industry thinks about privacy. The gala was scheduled for the first Saturday in December at the St. Regis, San Francisco. Sarah spent the intervening weeks preparing not just her presentation, but also trying to figure out what one wore to a Silicon Valley charity gala. Her usual wardrobe of jeans, sweaters, and comfortable flats seemed woefully inadequate for an event that would be attended by venture capitalists, tech executives, and what the society pages called San Francisco's digital elite. Her sister Amy, who worked in fashion marketing in Los Angeles, came to the rescue with a shopping trip to Union Square that resulted in Sarah owning her first truly elegant dress, a midnight blue silk number that managed to be both sophisticated and understated. The heels took some practice, but by the night of the gala, Sarah felt like she might actually belong among San Francisco's tech royalty. The St. Regis was transformed for the event, its grand ballroom decorated with subtle lighting and modern art installations that created an atmosphere of understated luxury. Sarah arrived early to set up her presentation materials, watching as the ballroom filled with the kind of people she'd only previously seen in TechCrunch articles and Forbes profiles. Marcus found her near the bar about an hour into the event, looking impeccable in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that somehow managed to be both formal and relaxed. He carried himself through the crowd with easy confidence, stopping to chat with investors, journalists, and employees with equal attention and genuine interest. "How are you holding up?" he asked, appearing at Sarah's elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. "Better than I expected," Sarah admitted, accepting the champagne gratefully. "Though I keep expecting someone to ask me what I'm doing here." Marcus laughed. "Imposter syndrome is endemic in Silicon Valley. Half the people in this room are convinced they don't belong here either." "Even you?" "Especially me," he said, his expression suddenly serious. "Every day I wake up amazed that people trust me with their investments, their careers, their data. It's terrifying and humbling." Before Sarah could respond, they were interrupted by the arrival of Victoria Ashford, a prominent venture capitalist whose firm had been one of Whitmore Industries' earliest investors. Victoria was the kind of woman who commanded attention simply by existing, tall, elegant, with platinum blonde hair and the kind of confident bearing that suggested she'd never doubted her place in any room. "Marcus, darling," Victoria said, air-kissing him on both cheeks with practiced efficiency. "You simply must introduce me to your mysterious privacy expert. Everyone's been talking about her presentation." Sarah felt herself being evaluated as Marcus made the introductions, Victoria's pale blue eyes taking in every detail of her appearance and filing it away for future reference. There was nothing overtly hostile in the assessment, but Sarah sensed a coolness, a subtle marking of territory. "Sarah's work is going to revolutionize how we think about user privacy," Marcus said, his pride in her accomplishments evident in his voice. "How fascinating," Victoria said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "And what's your background, Sarah? Stanford? MIT?" "Stanford for my graduate work," Sarah replied. "But I spent most of my career at smaller firms before joining Whitmore Industries." "How refreshing." Victoria's smile became slightly more genuine. "Marcus does have a talent for finding diamonds in the rough." The conversation continued for several more minutes, with Victoria asking probing questions about Sarah's technical background and career trajectory. It felt like a job interview conducted at a cocktail party, polite but unmistakably evaluative. After Victoria moved on to network with other guests, Sarah noticed a pattern emerging. Many of Marcus's social and professional contacts seemed surprised by her presence at his side, and their interactions with her carried an undercurrent of curiosity about her role in his life. It was subtle but unmistakable, the kind of social dynamics she'd never had to navigate before. "Am I imagining things?" she asked Marcus when they had a moment alone. "Or are people wondering what I'm doing here?" Marcus frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm getting the sense that people are trying to figure out who I am and why you're spending so much time talking to me." "You're here because you're brilliant and you're doing groundbreaking work," Marcus said firmly. "Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me." But as the evening progressed, Sarah became increasingly aware of the subtle social currents flowing around them. She overheard conversations that stopped abruptly when she approached, noticed glances exchanged between guests when Marcus introduced her, felt the weight of speculation and judgment from people who were trying to categorize her role in his life. The presentation went well. Better than well, actually. Sarah's explanation of the privacy protocol was met with genuine enthusiasm from the audience, and the Q&A session that followed demonstrated real engagement with the technical and ethical implications of the work. Several journalists approached her afterward for follow-up interviews, and she found herself surrounded by a small crowd of investors and tech executives asking detailed questions about implementation timelines and potential applications. Marcus watched from across the room, an expression of unmistakable pride on his face. When the crowd around Sarah finally dispersed, he made his way over to where she was standing near the bar, slightly overwhelmed by the positive response. "That was incredible," he said, his eyes bright with excitement. "You had them completely captivated. I think we just changed the entire conversation about privacy in Silicon Valley." Sarah felt a rush of accomplishment and gratitude. 6 months ago, she'd been an unknown engineer working on interesting but obscure problems. Tonight, she'd presented her ideas to some of the most influential people in the tech industry and seen them responded with genuine enthusiasm. "I couldn't have done it without your support," she said, meaning every word. "You took a chance on me, believed in the work, gave me the resources to develop it properly." "I recognize talent," Marcus replied, "but the ideas, the execution, the vision, that was all you." They were standing close together near the bar, the noise of the party creating an island of intimacy around their conversation. The champagne had left Sarah feeling warm and slightly euphoric, the combination of professional success and personal connection, creating a moment of perfect clarity. It was then that Marcus reached out and brushed a strand of hair away from her face, a gesture so gentle and unexpected that Sarah felt her breath catch. For a moment, they just looked at each other, the rest of the party fading into background noise. "Sarah," Marcus said softly, and there was something in his voice that made her heart race. "Yes?" Instead of answering with words, he leaned down and kissed her. It was soft and tentative at first, then deeper as Sarah responded, her hand coming up to rest on his chest. For 3 perfect seconds, nothing existed except the connection between them, the culmination of months of professional collaboration and growing personal affection. And then the flashes started. Sarah broke away from the kiss to see a dozen smartphone cameras pointed in their direction, held by guests who had been watching their interaction with keen interest. The moment that had felt private and sacred was being captured, transmitted, and shared before she could even process what had happened. "Oh God," she whispered, watching as people around the ballroom pulled out their phones to see the photos and videos that were already circulating. Marcus's expression shifted from tender to protective in an instant. "It's okay," he said quietly, taking her hand. "We'll handle this." But Sarah could already see that it was too late. Phones were buzzing throughout the ballroom as the images spread through social media, text messages, and email chains. She watched in horror as the intimate moment she'd shared with Marcus became a piece of digital gossip, dissected and analyzed by hundreds of people who didn't know either of them, but felt entitled to comment on their lives. "I need to go," Sarah said, her voice tight with panic. "I need to leave right now." "Sarah, wait," Marcus called after her. but she was already pushing through the crowd toward the exit, desperate to escape the ballroom that had transformed from a place of professional triumph to a fishbowl of unwanted attention. She made it to the hotel lobby before the tears started. The magnitude of what had just happened hit her like a physical blow, not just the kiss but its public nature, the way it would be interpreted, the impact it would have on her career and reputation. She was no longer Sarah Chen, talented engineer. She was now Sarah Chen, the woman who kissed Marcus Whitmore at his company's charity gala. Marcus caught up with her near the elevators, his face etched with concern and regret. "Sarah, I'm so sorry," he said. "I should have been more careful, more aware of the situation." "This changes everything," Sarah said, wiping tears from her cheeks. "You know that, right? There's no going back from this." "It doesn't have to change anything," Marcus replied. But even as he said it, they both knew it wasn't true. Sarah's phone was already buzzing with notifications, text messages from her sister, missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize, LinkedIn connection requests from journalists. In the span of 30 minutes, she'd gone from being a private person to a public figure, and the transformation felt violent and irreversible. "I need some time," she said, stepping into the elevator as the doors opened. "I need to think about what this means." "Can I call you tomorrow?" Marcus asked as the elevator doors began to close. Sarah nodded, but she wasn't sure she'd answer. The ride home to Mountain View was a blur of freeway lights and racing thoughts. Sarah's ancient Honda had never felt more like a sanctuary, a private space where she could begin to process the evening's events without the weight of public scrutiny. She drove in silence, the radio off, trying to separate her feelings about the kiss itself from her feelings about its aftermath. The kiss had been wonderful, tender and passionate and full of promise. It had felt like the natural culmination of months of growing connection, the moment when a professional relationship had revealed its deeper emotional foundation. If it had happened privately, Sarah thought she would be driving home in a state of happy anticipation, excited about what might develop between them. Instead, she felt exposed and vulnerable, like her most private emotions had been turned into entertainment for strangers. Her apartment felt different when she walked in, smaller and shabbier than usual, a stark contrast to the luxury of the St. Regis. Sarah kicked off her heels, hung up the beautiful dress that now felt like a costume, and collapsed onto her couch in yoga pants and an old Stanford t-shirt. Her phone continued to buzz with notifications, so she finally turned it off and poured herself a glass of wine. The silence was both a relief and a curse. Without the distraction of constant notifications, Sarah was left alone with her thoughts, trying to sort through the complex emotions that the evening had unleashed. She was angry at the guests who had photographed them, at the social media ecosystem that turned private moments into public spectacles, at herself for not being more careful. But underneath the anger was fear that this would define her career, that she would never again be seen as just a talented engineer, that every professional achievement would be overshadowed by her relationship with Marcus. And underneath the fear was something else, the memory of how she'd felt during those 3 seconds when Marcus had kissed her. Despite everything that had happened afterward, she couldn't deny that the kiss itself had been perfect, the kind of moment that made all the complexity and difficulty seem worthwhile. Sarah fell asleep on her couch, still wearing the Stanford t-shirt, her phone silent on the coffee table beside an empty wine glass. She woke up to someone pounding on her door. It was 7:30 a.m., and the insistent knocking suggested that whoever was outside wasn't going away. Sarah stumbled to the door, expecting to see a neighbor or delivery person, and instead found herself face to face with a young woman holding a microphone and flanked by a camera operator. "Sarah Chen? I'm Jessica Martinez from Bay Area Tech News. We'd like to get your comment on your relationship with Marcus Whitmore." Sarah slammed the door shut and leaned against it, her heart pounding. Through the peephole, she could see that there were actually 3 different news crews in the parking lot of her apartment complex, along with several people she didn't recognize who appeared to be waiting for her to emerge. Her phone. When she finally turned it on, revealed the full scope of the situation. The photos and videos from the gala had gone viral overnight, shared thousands of times across Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Tech blogs had picked up the story, with headlines like, "Whitmore's New Romance" and "The Mystery Woman Who Captured a Billionaire's Heart." Her LinkedIn profile had been screenshot and shared, along with speculation about her background, her qualifications, and her motives. Most disturbing were the comments sections, where strangers debated her appearance, her worthiness, and her intentions. Some defended her as the accomplished professional who happened to be in a relationship with her boss. Others dismissed her as a gold digger who had manipulated her way into Marcus's affections. The nastiest comments questioned whether she was qualified for her job at all, suggesting that her position at Whitmore Industries was the result of personal rather than professional considerations. Sarah's phone rang, showing Marcus's name on the caller ID. She stared at it for several rings before finally answering. "How are you holding up?" he asked without preamble. "There are reporters outside my apartment," Sarah said. "And I think I've become a trending topic on Twitter." "I know. I'm sorry. My PR team is working on managing the story, but it's going to take some time for the attention to die down." "Marcus, I can't live like this," Sarah said, looking out her window at the news crews. "I can't have my entire life turned into a public spectacle." "Come stay at my place for a few days," Marcus said immediately, "until things calm down." "That will only make it worse," Sarah replied. "Every decision we make now is going to be analyzed and criticized. If I move in with you, even temporarily, what do you think people will say about that?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "So what do you want to do?" Marcus asked finally. "I think," Sarah said slowly, "I need to take some time off, maybe work remotely for a while until the attention dies down." "Sarah, you don't have to change your life because of this. We can handle the media attention, the gossip. What matters is us and the work we're doing together." "But that's just it," Sarah said, her voice breaking slightly. "I'm not sure there can be an us anymore, not in the way that matters." After she hung up, Sarah spent the day fielding calls from reporters, declining interview requests, and researching corporate policies about relationships between employees and executives. What she found wasn't encouraging. While Whitmore Industries didn't explicitly prohibit such relationships, there were clear guidelines about disclosure, potential conflicts of interest, and the need to maintain professional boundaries. More troubling were the online discussions about her qualifications and her role in the company. Several anonymous posts on tech forums claimed to have inside information about her hire, suggesting that Marcus had personally intervened in the hiring process, and that her rapid advancement within the company was due to personal rather than professional factors. Sarah knew the claims were false. She'd been hired through the normal process, and her work on the privacy protocol spoke for itself. But she also knew that perception often mattered more than reality in Silicon Valley's gossip-driven culture. Over the following week, Sarah worked from her apartment while the media attention slowly faded. The reporters stopped camping outside her building, the social media posts became less frequent, and the tech blogs moved on to other stories. But the underlying problem remained. Her relationship with Marcus had fundamentally altered her professional standing within the company and the industry. Colleagues who had previously treated her as an equal now seemed uncertain how to interact with her. Some became overly deferential, as if her connection to Marcus gave her special status. Others seemed suspicious, watching her carefully for signs that she was leveraging her relationship for professional advantage. A few close colleagues tried to act normally, but even they seemed aware that the dynamics had shifted in ways that couldn't be undone. Marcus called her every day, sometimes multiple times, checking on her well-being and trying to convince her to return to the office. He was patient and understanding, but Sarah could hear the frustration in his voice as the days passed. "Your privacy protocol is launching in 3 weeks," he said during one of their conversations. "You should be leading the implementation, not hiding in your apartment." "I'm not hiding," Sarah replied, though even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. "I'm working. I'm contributing to the project. I'm just doing it remotely. It's not the same and you know it. The team needs you. I need you. Marcus, Sarah said gently, I need you to understand something. Before last week, I was known as someone who did excellent work. Now I'm known as the woman who kissed Marcus Whitmore. That's a fundamental change that affects how people see me, how they evaluate my contributions, how they make decisions about my career. Only if we let it, Marcus replied. Only if we give other people's opinions more power than they deserve. But Sarah knew it wasn't that simple. She'd spent her entire career building a reputation based on her technical skills and professional judgment. That reputation was now inextricably linked to her personal life, and she wasn't sure how to separate them again. The breaking point came during a video conference with the privacy protocol implementation team. Sarah had been participating in the meetings remotely, contributing to technical discussions and reviewing code submissions from her apartment. She thought she'd been managing the situation reasonably well, maintaining her professional relationships despite the unusual circumstances. But during the meeting, she noticed something that made her stomach drop. One of her colleagues, David Kim, was sharing his screen to review a code module, and Sarah could see his instant message window in the background. The messages were from other team members, and they were discussing her. Is Sarah actually contributing to this, or is she just on the call because Marcus wants her to be? Read one message. Hard to tell. Her technical input seems solid, but, you know. Read another. I heard she's been working on this project for months, but now I'm wondering how much of that was actually her work. Read a third. Sarah felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. These were her colleagues, people she'd worked closely with for months, people who had seen her technical contributions firsthand. The fact that they were now questioning her competence and her contributions felt like a betrayal that cut deeper than any media speculation. She ended the call abruptly, claiming a technical problem, and then sat in her apartment trying not to cry. Marcus called within an hour. David told me you dropped off the call suddenly. Are you okay? Sarah considered lying, making up some excuse about internet connectivity or personal issues. Instead, she told him exactly what she'd seen. Marcus was quiet for a long moment after she finished explaining. I'll talk to the team, he said finally. I'll make it clear that your contributions are valued and that this kind of speculation is unacceptable. No, Sarah said firmly. That will only make it worse. If you defend me, it'll look like favoritism. If you don't defend me, it'll look like you're abandoning me. Either way, it reinforces the idea that my professional standing depends on my personal relationship with you. So what do you want to do? Sarah had been thinking about this question for days, and she finally had an answer. I want to transfer to a different division, somewhere I can work without the constant speculation about our relationship affecting how my colleagues see my contributions. Sarah, no. You built the privacy protocol. It's your project, your vision. You can't walk away from it now. I'm not walking away from the work, Sarah said. I'm walking away from a situation that's become untenable for both of us. What about us? Marcus asked quietly. What about what's happening between us personally? It was the question Sarah had been dreading, because she didn't have a good answer. I don't know, she said honestly. I care about you. What happened between us at the gala? It felt real and important. But I also can't build a relationship under these circumstances, with this level of scrutiny and speculation. So we just pretend it never happened? I don't know, Sarah repeated. Maybe we need some time to figure out what's possible and what isn't. The conversation ended without resolution, both of them frustrated and hurt by circumstances neither had anticipated or wanted. 2 days later, Sarah received an official offer to transfer to Whitmore Industries' Emerging Technologies division, working on quantum computing applications. It was interesting work with the excellent team, and it would allow her to start fresh without the baggage of her previous role. She accepted the transfer, effective immediately. Her last day working on the privacy protocol team was conducted entirely via email. She documented her work, transferred her files, and provided detailed notes for her replacement. It felt like closing the door on the most professionally fulfilling period of her life. Marcus sent her a single text message. "This isn't over." Sarah wasn't sure if he was referring to the privacy protocol, their relationship, or something else entirely. The quantum computing team was located in a different building on the Whitmore Industries campus, and Sarah found the change of environment refreshing. Her new colleagues knew about the media attention from the gala, but it felt like distant gossip rather than immediate workplace drama. She was able to focus on her work without constantly wondering if people were questioning her qualifications or motivations. Dr. Amanda Chen, no relation despite the shared last name, led the quantum computing team with a combination of technical brilliance and no-nonsense leadership that Sarah found immediately appealing. During their first one-on-one meeting, Dr. Chen addressed the elephant in the room directly. "I don't care about your personal life," she said bluntly. "I care about your work. If you can contribute to what we're building here, you're welcome. If you can't, you won't last long regardless of who you know in the company." It was exactly what Sarah needed to hear. Over the following weeks, Sarah threw herself into quantum computing research with the same intensity she'd brought to privacy protocols. The work was different, more theoretical, more speculative, but it engaged the same problem-solving skills that had made her successful in cybersecurity. She saw Marcus occasionally in the hallways or cafeteria, and their interactions were polite but strained. They would exchange pleasantries about work or make small talk about company initiatives, but the easy intimacy they'd developed over months of collaboration was gone, replaced by a careful distance that felt necessary, but painful. Sarah missed him. She missed their long conversations about technology and ethics, their collaborative problem-solving sessions, the way he challenged her thinking and supported her ideas. She missed the person she'd gotten to know beneath the CEO persona, thoughtful, principled, surprisingly vulnerable. Most of all, she missed the promise of what might have developed between them if circumstances had been different. But she also felt a sense of relief at being able to focus on her work without constant speculation about her motivations or qualifications. The quantum computing team evaluated her contributions based on their technical merit, not on her personal relationships. It was what she'd wanted from the beginning of her career, and what she'd lost when her private life became public. 3 weeks after her transfer, the privacy protocol officially launched. Sarah watched the announcement from her apartment, feeling a complex mixture of pride and sadness as Marcus presented her work to the world. He credited her contributions explicitly and thoroughly, making it clear that the breakthrough belonged to her. But Sarah knew that most people would remember the announcement as Marcus Whitmore's latest innovation. The launch was a massive success. Privacy advocates praised the protocol as a genuine breakthrough in user data protection. Tech companies announced plans to license the technology, and industry analysts predicted that it would become the new standard for privacy protection across the internet. Sarah received dozens of congratulatory messages from former colleagues, friends, and industry contacts. Several job recruiters reached out with offers from other companies, eager to hire the person who had developed such an innovative privacy solution. But the call she was hoping for from Marcus never came. 2 months after the privacy protocol launch, Sarah was working late in the quantum computing lab when she encountered Marcus in the campus parking garage. It was nearly 9 p.m., and the garage was largely empty except for their 2 cars parked several spaces apart. "Working late?" Marcus asked as they approached their vehicles simultaneously. "Big breakthrough today," Sarah replied. "We think we've solved the coherent stability problem that's been blocking our quantum encryption project." "That's great," Marcus said, and she could hear genuine enthusiasm in his voice. Quantum encryption could be even more significant than the privacy protocol. They stood in the fluorescent-lit garage, the conversation feeling both natural and awkward. So much history and unresolved emotion existed between them, but they were trying to interact as professional colleagues. "How are you doing?" Marcus asked finally. "I mean, personally. Are you okay with how everything worked out?" Sarah considered her answer carefully. "I'm doing good work with a team that respects my contributions. That's what I wanted from the beginning. But is it what you want now? Marcus pressed. Are you happy? I'm content, Sarah said, which wasn't quite the same thing. I miss working with you, Marcus said. I miss our conversations, our collaboration. The company is building incredible things, but it doesn't feel the same without your input on the big picture stuff. Marcus. Sarah started, but he held up a hand. I know all the reasons why it's complicated, why it might not work, but I also know that what we had, professionally and personally, was real and important and worth fighting for. Fighting for how? Sarah asked. What exactly do you propose we do? Resume our professional collaboration and ignore the fact that everyone will assume I'm getting special treatment. Start dating openly and deal with the constant speculation about my role in the company? There's no clean solution to this. Maybe clean solutions are overrated, Marcus said. Maybe some things are worth dealing with complications for. Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. It was Dr. Chen, probably calling about the quantum encryption breakthrough. Sarah glanced at the phone, then at Marcus. I should take this, she said apologetically. Marcus nodded. Of course. But Sarah, think about what I said. Some things are worth fighting for. He got into his car and drove away, leaving Sarah standing alone in the parking garage with her phone still ringing in her hand. The call from Dr. Chen was indeed about the quantum encryption project, but it contained news that Sarah hadn't expected. A major tech publication had gotten wind of their breakthrough and wanted to do a feature story about the quantum computing team. They specifically wanted to interview Sarah as the lead researcher on the encryption protocol. It's exactly the kind of recognition your work deserves, Dr. Chen said, and it might help establish you as a thought leader in quantum computing, separate from your previous work in privacy protocols. Sarah felt a flutter of excitement. This could be the opportunity she'd been hoping for, a chance to build a professional reputation based entirely on her technical contributions, without any reference to her personal life or her relationship with Marcus. The interview was scheduled for the following week, and Sarah spent the intervening days preparing thoroughly. She reviewed every aspect of the quantum encryption project, prepared explanations for technical concepts that would be accessible to a general audience, and practiced talking about her work with the kind of confidence and authority she'd developed during her privacy protocol presentations. The journalist, Michael Torres from Quantum Computing Today, was clearly knowledgeable about the field and asked sophisticated questions about the technical challenges and potential applications of quantum encryption. Sarah found herself enjoying the conversation, feeling like she was back in her element as a technical expert whose ideas were being taken seriously. One thing I'm curious about, Torres said toward the end of the interview, is your career trajectory. You've made significant contributions in both privacy protocols and quantum computing in a relatively short period. That's unusual. Most researchers specialize in one area. I think the fields are more connected than they might appear, Sarah replied. Both privacy protocols and quantum encryption are fundamentally about protecting information in an increasingly connected world. The technical approaches are different, but the underlying problems are related. And both projects have been at Whitmore Industries, Torres noted. What's it like working for Marcus Whitmore? He has a reputation as someone who gives researchers unusual freedom to pursue innovative projects. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. She'd been hoping to avoid any mention of Marcus or their relationship, but she realized that was probably unrealistic, given that both of her major projects had been at his company. Marcus creates an environment where technical innovation is genuinely valued, she said carefully. Researchers are encouraged to pursue ambitious projects and given the resources they need to succeed. There were some rumors about a personal relationship between you and Whitmore, Torres said, his tone neutral but probing. Did that affect your professional standing at the company in any way? Sarah had been preparing for this question, but it still felt like a punch to the gut. My professional contributions speak for themselves, she said firmly. The privacy protocol and the quantum encryption project are both technically sound innovations that will have real-world impact. That's what matters. Of course, Torres said. But Silicon Valley is a small community, and personal relationships between executives and employees do sometimes create complicated workplace dynamics. Every workplace has complex social dynamics, Sarah replied. What matters is whether good work gets recognized and supported. In my experience at Whitmore Industries, it does. The interview continued for another 20 minutes, covering technical details and future research directions, but Sarah could tell that Torres was still interested in the personal angle. She managed to redirect the conversation back to her technical work, but she left the interview feeling unsettled. When the article was published 2 weeks later, Sarah was mostly pleased with the coverage. Torres had done justice to the technical complexity of the quantum encryption project and had positioned her as a serious researcher, whose work was pushing the boundaries of the field. The article included detailed explanations of the breakthrough and its potential applications, along with quotes from other experts who praised Sarah's innovative approach. But buried in the middle of the article was a paragraph that made Sarah's heart sink. Chen's rapid rise at Whitmore Industries has been remarkable, moving from privacy protocols to quantum computing, while navigating the complexities of Silicon Valley's interconnected professional and personal relationships. While Chen declined to discuss details of her rumored relationship with CEO Marcus Whitmore, colleagues describe a working relationship that has been both professionally productive and personally complicated. Sarah read the paragraph several times, trying to understand how Torres had gotten quotes from colleagues and what exactly they had told him. The implication was clear. Her professional success was still being viewed through the lens of her personal relationship with Marcus. Her phone rang within an hour of the article's publication. It was Marcus. "I saw the article," he said without preamble. "The technical coverage is excellent. You should be proud." "But," Sarah prompted, hearing the reservation in his voice, "but I'm concerned about the speculation regarding our relationship. I thought we'd moved past that." "Apparently not," Sarah said, feeling exhausted by the whole situation. "I don't know how to make it go away, Marcus. Every professional achievement is going to be filtered through questions about our relationship." "Maybe that's okay," Marcus said quietly. "Maybe we stop running from it and start being honest about what happened between us." "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe we acknowledge that we care about each other, that we have a relationship that's both professional and personal, and that we're capable of managing the complexities that creates." Sarah felt a familiar flutter of hope and fear. "Marcus, we tried that. It didn't work." "We tried hiding from it," Marcus corrected. "We tried pretending it didn't matter, tried to separate our professional and personal lives in ways that might not be realistic. We never tried just being honest about it." "Honest about what, exactly?" "Honest about the fact that I'm in love with you," Marcus said simply, "and that I think you feel the same way about me." Sarah sat in her apartment, phone pressed to her ear, feeling like the world had shifted slightly off its axis. Marcus Whitmore, billionaire, CEO, one of the most powerful people in Silicon Valley, had just told her he loved her. "Marcus," she said softly, "that complicates everything. I know, but maybe some complications are worth it." Over the following days, Sarah found herself thinking constantly about Marcus's declaration. She replayed their conversation, analyzed her own feelings, and tried to imagine what a relationship between them might actually look like. The truth was that she did love him. She'd been falling in love with him for months. During their long conversations about technology and ethics, their collaborative work sessions, their walks through Golden Gate Park. The kiss at the gala hadn't been an impulse. It had been the culmination of feelings that had been building for months. But love wasn't the only factor to consider. There were practical questions about how they could manage a relationship given their positions in the company, how they could handle the ongoing public scrutiny, how they could maintain their professional credibility while acknowledging their personal connection. Sarah was still wrestling with these questions when she received an unexpected call from Victoria Ashford, the venture capitalist she'd met at the gala. "I hope you don't mind me reaching out directly," Victoria said after introducing herself. "I got your number from a mutual contact. I was wondering if we could meet for coffee. I have a proposition that might interest you. Sarah was curious enough to agree to the meeting, which Victoria scheduled at a high-end cafe in Palo Alto that was clearly chosen for its discretion and exclusive clientele. Victoria arrived precisely on time, dressed in the kind of understated luxury that suggested wealth without ostentation. "I'll get straight to the point," Victoria said after they'd ordered their drinks. "I've been following your work, both the privacy protocol and the quantum encryption project. I think you have enormous potential as a researcher and as an entrepreneur." "Thank you," Sarah said carefully, unsure where the conversation was heading. "I'd like to offer you the opportunity to start your own company," Victoria continued. "My firm would provide initial funding, let's say 10 million to start, with the potential for much more as you scale. You'd have complete independence to pursue whatever research interests you most." Sarah felt her breath catch. It was the kind of offer that most researchers could only dream of. Complete financial backing to pursue innovative projects without corporate constraints or bureaucratic limitations. "That's an incredibly generous offer," Sarah said. "But I'm curious why you're making it." Victoria smiled, and there was something calculating in her expression. "Because I think you're wasting your talent at Whitmore Industries. You're clearly brilliant, but you're also constrained by corporate politics and other complications." "Other complications?" "Your relationship with Marcus," Victoria said bluntly. "It's affecting how people perceive your work, how seriously they take your contributions. That's not fair to you, but it's reality." Sarah felt a familiar anger rising. "My work speaks for itself." "Of course it does," Victoria said smoothly. "But perception matters in this industry. Right now, you're known as Marcus Whitmore's girlfriend who happens to be a good engineer. If you start your own company, you can be known as Sarah Chen, the brilliant entrepreneur who revolutionized privacy and quantum computing." It was a compelling argument, and Sarah could see the logic in Victoria's reasoning. Starting her own company would give her complete professional independence and allow her to build a reputation based entirely on her own achievements. "There is one condition," Victoria added casually. "I'd want you to start clean. New projects, new research directions, no intellectual property from Whitmore Industries, no ongoing collaborations with your former colleagues." "Including Marcus," Sarah said, understanding the implication. "Including Marcus," Victoria confirmed. "I think a clean break would be best for everyone involved." Sarah left the meeting with a lot to think about. Victoria's offer was tempting: the freedom to pursue her own research agenda, the financial resources to tackle ambitious projects, the opportunity to build a company from the ground up. It would solve many of the problems that had been plaguing her since the gala, allowing her to establish herself as an independent professional without the complications of her relationship with Marcus. But it would also mean giving up everything she'd built at Whitmore Industries: her work on the quantum encryption project, her collaborative relationships with colleagues, and most significantly, any possibility of a relationship with Marcus. That evening, Sarah called her sister Amy in Los Angeles. "I need to talk through something complicated," Sarah said after they'd exchanged pleasantries. Oh, Amy said. "This is about the billionaire, isn't it?" Sarah had told Amy about the situation in general terms, but she hadn't shared all the details about her feelings for Marcus or the ongoing professional complications. "I've been offered an opportunity to start my own company," Sarah said. "Complete financial backing, total independence, the chance to build something entirely my own." "That sounds amazing," Amy said. "What's the catch?" "I'd have to cut ties with Whitmore Industries completely. No ongoing collaborations, no joint projects, no relationship with Marcus." "Ah," Amy said knowingly. "So the question is whether you're willing to give up the guy to get the job." "It's more complicated than that," Sarah said. "The question is whether I'm willing to give up the possibility of a relationship in order to have complete professional independence." "What do you want more?" Amy asked. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. 6 months ago, I would have said professional independence was the most important thing. But now, Now you're in love with him, Amy said gently. Yeah, Sarah said quietly. I am. So here's the real question, Amy said. If you take this offer and start your own company, will you spend the rest of your life wondering what might have happened with Marcus? And if you stay at Whitmore Industries and try to make things work with him, will you spend the rest of your life wondering what you might have achieved on your own? It was exactly the right question, and exactly the one Sarah had been avoiding. I think, Sarah said slowly, I need to have a conversation with Marcus before I make any decisions. The next day was a Saturday, and Sarah drove to Marcus's house in Atherton for the first time since their relationship had become complicated. His house was impressive but not ostentatious, a modernist design that emphasized clean lines and integration with the natural landscape. It sat on several acres of meticulously maintained grounds, providing privacy without feeling isolated. Marcus answered the door in jeans and a Stanford sweatshirt, looking younger and more relaxed than she'd seen him in months. His face lit up when he saw her, and Sarah felt her heart race in response. This is a pleasant surprise, he said, stepping aside to let her in. Coffee? They sat on his deck overlooking a garden that was beginning to show signs of spring growth. The morning was clear and warm, with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of jasmine and freshly cut grass. It felt peaceful and private, a sharp contrast to the public scrutiny that had defined their interactions for months. I need to tell you about something, Sarah said, and then explained Victoria's offer in detail. Marcus listened without interruption, his expression growing more serious as she described the terms and conditions of the potential investment. It's a good offer, he said finally. Victoria's firm has an excellent track record, and $10 million in initial funding would give you tremendous flexibility to pursue innovative projects. But, Sarah prompted, hearing the reservation in his voice, but I think Victoria's motivations might be more complicated than they appear, Marcus said carefully. She's been trying to poach top talent from Whitmore Industries for years, and she's particularly interested in disrupting our privacy and quantum computing initiatives. You think this is corporate espionage? Sarah asked. I think this is Victoria recognizing an opportunity to damage my company while acquiring a brilliant researcher, Marcus replied. The condition about cutting all ties with Whitmore Industries isn't just about your professional independence. It's about preventing us from benefiting from any future innovations you develop. Sarah felt a twist of disappointment. She'd been hoping that Victoria's offer was motivated by genuine recognition of her talents, not by corporate rivalry. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't consider it, Marcus continued. If professional independence is what you want most, this could be the right opportunity. What do you want me to do? Sarah asked. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the garden. I want you to be happy, he said finally. I want you to have the career you deserve, doing work that fulfills you and challenges you. If that means starting your own company, I'll support that decision even if it means we can't be together. And if I stay at Whitmore Industries, then we figure out how to make this work, Marcus said, turning to look at her directly. We acknowledge our relationship publicly. We establish clear professional boundaries, and we deal with whatever complications arise. What if it doesn't work? Sarah asked. What if the professional complications prove too difficult to manage? Then we'll have tried, Marcus said simply. But I think we owe it to ourselves to find out what's possible. Sarah felt tears starting to form in her eyes. Marcus, I'm scared. I'm scared of making the wrong choice, scared of damaging my career, scared of losing you. Marcus moved closer to her on the deck furniture and took her hand. I'm scared too, he admitted. I've never felt this way about anyone before, and I don't want to lose you either. But I also don't want fear to make our decisions for us. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, holding hands and looking out at the garden. Sarah felt the peace of the moment, the rightness of being with Marcus in a private space where they could just be themselves without public scrutiny or professional complications. I love you too, she said quietly. I should have said that earlier, but I was too scared of what it might mean. Marcus squeezed her hand. What do you think it means? "I think it means we try," Sarah said, feeling a sense of clarity that had been elusive for months. "I think it means we stop hiding from our relationship and start figuring out how to make it work. Even if it's complicated?" "Especially if it's complicated," Sarah said, surprising herself with her certainty. "The best things in life usually are." Marcus leaned over and kissed her, and this time there were no cameras, no crowds, no public scrutiny. It was just the two of them on a sunny Saturday morning, making a choice to build something together despite all the reasons why it might be difficult. When they broke apart, Sarah felt like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. For months, she'd been trying to choose between her professional ambitions and her feelings for Marcus, as if the two were mutually exclusive. Now she realized that maybe the choice was different, not between career and relationship, but between fear and possibility. "So what do we do now?" she asked. "Now we make some phone calls," Marcus said. "I call Victoria and tell her that you won't be accepting her offer. You call Dr. Chen and let her know that you'd like to discuss expanding your role in the quantum computing division. And then we figure out how to be honest with our colleagues about our relationship. What about the media attention, the speculation? We deal with it," Marcus said. "We be honest about our relationship. We maintain professional boundaries at work, and we let our actions speak louder than gossip." Over the following weeks, Sarah and Marcus began the complex process of integrating their personal and professional lives in a way that felt authentic and sustainable. They disclosed their relationship to Whitmore Industries' HR department and worked with the company's ethics committee to establish guidelines that would prevent any conflicts of interest. Sarah remained in the quantum computing division, reporting to Dr. Chen rather than directly to Marcus, and they agreed to maintain clear boundaries between their professional and personal interactions during work hours. The announcement of their relationship was met with a mixture of reactions from colleagues, the media, and the general public. Some criticized the power dynamics inherent in a relationship between a CEO and an employee. Others defended their right to private lives and pointed to Sarah's obvious qualifications and contributions. The tech press covered the story extensively, but the focus gradually shifted from gossip to analysis of how companies could better manage workplace relationships in an era of increased scrutiny. Most importantly, Sarah found that her professional standing within the company actually improved once their relationship was public. Colleagues no longer had to speculate about the nature of her connection to Marcus, and her technical contributions were evaluated on their own merits rather than filtered through assumptions about favoritism or special treatment. The quantum encryption project continued to progress rapidly, with Sarah leading a team that developed breakthrough applications for secure communication and data protection. Her work attracted attention from academic researchers, government agencies, and private companies, establishing her as a leading expert in the field. When Quantum Computing Today featured her on their cover 6 months later, the article focused entirely on her technical innovations, without any mention of her personal life. Marcus, meanwhile, found that having a stable, public relationship actually enhanced his professional reputation. Rather than being seen as an emotionally unavailable workaholic, he was viewed as someone who had successfully balanced personal happiness with professional achievement. Investors and business partners noted that he seemed more relaxed and focused, and employee satisfaction surveys showed improved morale company-wide. 8 months after the gala where everything had changed, Sarah and Marcus attended another Whitmore Industries charity event, this time as an openly acknowledged couple. Sarah wore a different dress, equally elegant but more confident, and carried herself with the assurance of someone who had learned to navigate public scrutiny without losing her sense of self. The event was held at the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco, with guests mingling among the museum's exhibits while raising money for STEM education programs in underserved communities. Sarah found herself engaged in fascinating conversations with researchers, entrepreneurs, and philanthropists who were genuinely interested in her work on quantum encryption. "It's different this time," Marcus observed as they stood near the planetarium, watching guests explore the interactive exhibits. "What's different?" Sarah asked. "The way people respond to you," Marcus said. Before, they were trying to figure out who you were and why you mattered. Now they know exactly who you are and why your work is important. Sarah looked around the room, noticing that he was right. The conversations she was having were substantive and professional, focused on her research and its applications, rather than speculation about her relationship with Marcus. "I think I've figured something out," Sarah said, taking Marcus's hand as they walked toward the museum's butterfly garden. "What's that?" "The kiss that night at the St. Regis, the one that got photographed and shared and analyzed by strangers. It wasn't actually the beginning of our relationship. It was just the moment when our relationship became visible to other people." Marcus smiled. "So when did our relationship actually begin?" Sarah thought back through the months of collaboration, long conversations, and growing connection. "I think it began the first time you asked me what I thought, rather than what I knew," she said. "During that board presentation, when you wanted to understand not just the technical aspects of the privacy protocol, but the philosophical implications." "And when did you know you loved me?" Marcus asked. "When you suggested we meet at that coffee shop in the Mission instead of in your office," Sarah replied. "Because it told me that you were more interested in having a real conversation than in maintaining the hierarchy." They had reached the butterfly garden, a warm, humid environment filled with tropical plants and dozens of species of butterflies from around the world. The space felt magical and private despite being in the middle of a public museum, and Sarah found herself thinking about how much her life had changed since that first awkward morning when she'd arrived late to her first day at Whitmore Industries. "Do you ever regret it?" Marcus asked. "The complications, the public scrutiny, the professional challenges." Sarah considered the question seriously. The past year had been difficult in ways she'd never anticipated, forcing her to navigate complex social dynamics and public attention that she'd never sought. But it had also been the most professionally fulfilling and personally meaningful period of her life. "No," she said finally. "I regret some of the ways we handled things early on, but I don't regret the relationship itself. We've built something real together, both professionally and personally. Even though people still whisper sometimes?" "Let them whisper," Sarah said, surprising herself with her confidence. "We know who we are and what we've accomplished together. That's what matters." As they made their way back toward the main reception, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, she'd been an anonymous engineer working on interesting but obscure problems. Now she was a recognized expert in quantum computing, leading breakthrough research that would have real-world impact. A year ago, she'd never imagined that she could fall in love with someone as successful and powerful as Marcus Whitmore. Now she understood that their professional collaboration had created the foundation for a personal connection that was deeper and more meaningful than anything she'd experienced before. The kiss that had started it all, the 3 seconds that had been captured, shared, and analyzed by thousands of strangers, had indeed echoed through every phone in the room that night at the St. Regis. But its real impact hadn't been in the social media posts or gossip columns. Its real impact had been in forcing Sarah and Marcus to confront their feelings for each other and decide whether those feelings were worth fighting for. Standing in the California Academy of Sciences, surrounded by the hum of conversation and the gentle flutter of butterfly wings, Sarah knew that they'd made the right choice. Love, like innovation, required courage, the willingness to pursue something meaningful, despite the risks and complications it might create. "Ready to go home?" Marcus asked as the evening wound down. "Ready," Sarah said, taking his hand as they made their way toward the exit. Outside, the San Francisco evening was cool and clear, with fog beginning to drift in from the Pacific. They walked to Marcus's car, past groups of guests who were continuing their conversations on the museum steps, and Sarah felt a deep sense of contentment and anticipation for whatever challenges and opportunities lay ahead. The kiss that had echoed through every phone in the room had been just the beginning of their story, not the end. Everything that had happened since, the complications, the growth, the professional achievements, the deepening of their relationship, had been the real substance of their connection. And as they drove through the city toward home, Sarah knew that the best chapters of their story were still being written. What did you think of Sarah and Marcus's journey from professional colleagues to partners navigating both personal and professional challenges? We'd love to hear in the comments about your favorite moment from their story. Was it the initial presentation that brought them together? The complicated aftermath of the viral kiss? Or their decision to choose love despite the complications? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible stories of unexpected connections and the courage to choose authenticity over ease. More amazing tales of love, ambition, and finding your place in the world are coming your way.